Hello, college football fans, and welcome to episode 213 of College Football Throwdown. I'm your co-host, Alex Schmitz, and today I'm joined, as always, by my dad, Peter Schmitz.
Hello, Husker fans and college football fans.
Hello, everybody. We're here today to talk about what's been going on in the national world of college football for the past week. We did not have a Nebraska football game this past week. We had a bye. So we'll be talking about, the news that has sprung up from that camp and preview the upcoming game against Penn State. That's going to be very critical to the end of our season, as well as diving into, what's coming up next for college football as a whole, as we're getting towards the end of the season and the playoffs rearing their head and all that fun stuff.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's getting down to the last few weeks. And so all kinds of, tends to tighten everything up. The weather becomes more of a factor, injuries and just people being tired and not having the physical energy and the pop and enthusiasm that they had before. Some teams are kind of packing it in for the season because they haven't had the year they hoped they would. So there's all kinds of dynamics going on, which makes, this is a bad time for people who bet.
Yes. Well, we'll talk about this later. Maybe I should have bet this past week because I was pretty good on my predictions.
You were. Well, and we may talk a little bit more about that because of the spread on our game this week, which is surprisingly large.
Yes. And for those who may be listening to our podcast for the first time, we're a father-son duo here to talk about college football by college football fans for college football fans. We'll be talking a lot about our favorite team, the Nebraska Cornhuskers. But before we dive into all that, we got to stick with our tradition and open up a cold beverage. I got myself one of my Golden Road Mango Carts.
All right. And I'm going to be drinking one of my final Keweenaw Brewing Company's. I love this beer. It's called a Red Jacket, and it's a wonderful amber ale. So if you ever get up to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, then I would encourage you to find some Keweenaw Brewing Company, or better yet, go to the brewery.
There you go. All right. Cheers.
Here we go. Cheers.
Yeah. So in terms of Nebraska news from the past week, there were a couple things we wanted to highlight. One cool thing that happened since our last podcast was that Emmett Johnson was named National Player of the Week last week after his great performance against UCLA. Nebraska, the athletic department, is going all in on the pushing him for the Heisman thing. There's a website for it now. You can do the fan vote for him and all that. So he would have to have two great games here against Penn State and Iowa for that to be a legitimate thing, I believe. But let's see if he can make it happen.
That's right. Well, and Coach Rule talked a little bit about that in his presentation today, for his game week Monday press conference. And I think he kind of let the cat out of the bag a little bit that, hey, when you have guys that are playing like EJ's playing, you need to actually promote them, even if the reality is his chances to get to even be a finalist for the Heisman Trophy are slim and none. They really are. I mean, he'd have to have not just good games, but spectacular games, and we'd have to win both of them, right? That would be absolute minimums to even have the dialogue. However, just this week, the promotion of it, the National Player of the Week thing, and in the voting, because he activated Husker Nation in that voting at the Heisman.org or whatever, EJ ended up being number 2 in voting. So he immediately shot, because they still are allowing you to vote for like 20 people. There's a lot of names still on that list. And EJ went to the top of the heap, like right quick. That just tells you you're producing visibility and conversation, even if ultimately EJ doesn't get it. I'm hoping that he gets first team All Big Ten. I mean, I think that'll be great, and maybe gets second or third team All American. If he gets that level of recognition, that's a huge, huge step for him and for our program.
Yeah. Well, and I also learned through this that that Heisman vote does actually have a meaning, because basically whoever the collective public votes as number one there basically gets one actual vote in the real
Right.
Heisman voting process. So it's not much, but it's something.
Right. Exactly.
This was from Matt Rule's press conference from last week, not the Monday one from today that you're referring to. But he was asked about, our NIL situation and, the money, that he has available to him to get transfer portal players and things like that. And he said something that Husker Nation liked to hear, which is that he feels that he's good where he is now, even though he may not have before, and that he has what he needs to go get the players he wants. Do you think that he's being 100% truthful there, or is that a bit of, placating the cameras?
Well, I think it's even more sophisticated than that, or nuanced. I think it absolutely is playing to the cameras. I think it's him sending a very strong message across the bow to his boss, athletic director Dannon, as well as to any of the collective booster group, right? The people that are significant contributors to the NIL collective, to say, you guys promised me, because, whatever that was negotiated in his contract extension, it's not like the university is writing a check to the collective for some massive amount of money and transferring money. But what they can do is guide donations, right, from athletic department general funds for, say, making renovations and doing things in the football program for that side of things, or redirecting that money by encouraging them instead to gift that money to 1890. And I think that's the message that was being sent there, I think. Because basically he's saying, you guys promised me that we would be competitive, and so we're going to be competitive. I'm going to make that assumption, and I'm going to spend like that. But I think he's not the only coach saying that. That is being said by every coach pretty much across the country. And so the amount of money that's going to be being thrown out during this portal cycle is going to be stupid high. I mean, it's going to take what's already been ridiculous and double or triple it. That's my prediction.
Right.
Quarterbacks that were a year ago, you were able to get for $1 million a year type of contract. You're going to need to spend 2 or 3 to get the same type of athlete and quarterback if you need it. You know what I mean? Like that's the market is going to be set at absurdly high levels, because everybody has now concluded that this clearinghouse for NIL is a complete inept situation at the NCAA. And so we're just going to hop right over the top of them and ignore them, because they can't punish everyone. If everybody's cheating on this thing, then they're going to have to come up with new rules, right? Like they're going to have to concede that the system isn't working, and they're going to have to reboot somehow. I don't know what it's going to be, because I've argued from the beginning that this is a quagmire they can't just put back in a box.
Right. And then one piece of good news that came out of today's Monday press conference is that 2 of our previously injured players, McCullough and Merritt, are both practicing this week. So good thing that we'll have them back for this important Penn State game.
Right. I mean, those are 2 really good linebackers, maybe 2 of our better tackling linebackers. And so that's going to be very helpful because, as we can expect, based on recent success from Penn State, they have been competitive in their games against Indiana and then won their game last week primarily because of their running game. And they lined up and just bullied, and I mean bullied, like literally the running backs would get behind their offensive line and just kind of slow step behind them and let them just plow over the defense. And they were getting 6 and 8 yards in the fourth quarter against Michigan State. So I would expect to see a lot of similar, philosophies. I think that there was their last 2 drives, they ran the ball like 30 times in the last 3 drives of the game or something like that. It was pretty much pound, 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 pound. That's all they did.
Right. Yes, we'll be talking about that soon here.
Yes, sorry.
That's fine. And then one unfortunate piece of news is that there was a 2026 offensive lineman who had committed to Nebraska. His name is Leon Noyle Jr. He was rated as a 3-star on the websites. He has decommitted from us. So, not like one of our star recruits from that cycle, but, never good news to see.
Right. Well, and you know what? He was a player we obviously wanted, but I don't think he was a guy that like we were going to just pull out all the stops to go try to retain. And so once we knew that he had kind of gone a little silent and was setting up a visit with Mississippi State, we kind of figured that was probably the direction things were going, and maybe they were offering more money or whatever. And I just think we just decided to say we can step away and allocate that scholarship to somebody else down the road.
Right. Yep. So yeah, you were just talking about Penn State, of course, who played against Michigan State this past weekend, and Penn State beat them 28-10. Penn State, of course, being Nebraska's next opponent, so we were particularly interested in that game. And I would say I'm not surprised that Penn State won. We beat Michigan State earlier this year. They've been struggling a lot throughout this season. But I will say, I watched the highlights of that game. Michigan State kept it close until that fourth quarter. The whole third quarter went by and there was no scoring from either team, so it was stuck at Penn State having a 14-10 lead.
Right.
And, like you say, it felt like in that fourth quarter, Michigan State's defense finally kind of wore out and Penn State was able to kind of blow past them. They actually scored the last touchdown late. So, the game could have easily been something like 21-10 or 21-13. But
Right.
Michigan State had a drive going and then fumbled it. And from there, their defense really had no fight left in them. Like you say, Penn State scored pretty quick on that following drive.
Right. And Penn State was quite impressive in their power that they showed, but I would agree with you. And so it kind of points to, if we're going to be successful, and again, we're going to be playing them at their house at night for a whiteout situation. So, the environment is going to be way, way more difficult for our young quarterback than it was out at UCLA. And, but what Coach Rule talked about today, and I think is probably real. I mean, he's not saying anything that isn't unexpected, is that I think he recognizes that we need to play aggressively and we need to try to score a lot of points. Because what we would love to do is get Penn State behind by enough points that they're kind of forced out of the running game and into more of a passing game.
Yes. Well, because to speak to that, I have the stats from that Michigan State game pulled up. Their quarterback, Grunkemeyer, who replaced Drew Aller,
Right.
He was 8 of 13 for 127 yards. So he did have a couple of deep balls in the game. He did show that, if the guy is open, he has the strength to make that pass. But they weren't relying on him a lot to throw the ball, and he also didn't run it for very much either. It was mostly him just handing the ball off to Keyshawn Allen, their star running back, who had 181 rushing yards on the game. So I think that this is one where John Butler should rely on the fact that we have had elite pass defense in the country this year, and trust our defensive backs to have good coverage on Penn State's receivers, just load the box and kind of dare them to throw it. I think that would be a good starting game plan at the very least, and then see how Penn State responds to it.
Yes, and I need another caveat to that, since he's done that a few times before, but he has been unsuccessful because he chooses to put all of his second level linebackers up on the line of scrimmage so as to create some confusion about which ones are coming and which ones aren't. But by doing that, those linebackers are often not fast enough to get get to depth, get to their positions, or to pick up, if it's a man coverage situation, pick up their man in a timely fashion. Their head is not on a swivel. They don't have the time because they're not off the line of scrimmage by 4 or 5 yards like they should be, and it just messes things up. So if you're going to do that, then that's fine, but don't bring everybody up on the line of scrimmage.
Right.
If I see that, then he's wasting the extra people in the box that he's putting in there, in my opinion.
Now, to counter that, while we're obviously back to recording remotely here, but you were in
Yes.
town for several days for the UCLA game. We did our podcast together, which was very fun. And while we were together, we went back to that UCLA game and we're stopping on certain plays to analyze the formations and how things were breaking down. Specifically on some of those plays where Nico Amalieva was gashing us running the ball. And what we noticed was that we could see the logic to what John Butler was calling, where it's like, okay,
Yes.
this linebacker here is assigned to cover the gap and to be the guy to get the quarterback. And he just made a mistake where he, was a step too far to the left. And if he had been a bit more to the right, he would have had the angle to cover Nico. Or, this guy needed to fake his pressure and then pull back, and he did it a little bit too late. And that meant he was out of position, to cover the run. So what our kind of analysis is that John Butler's defense has a logic to it, and he is thinking about protecting the run, but he's just asking a lot of our defensive players to do multiple things or check down to do X first and then go back to Y. And if they're off by even a little bit, the play can blow up. So it's kind of that NFL precision that you're asking from some college players.
Exactly. And our linebackers don't have the athleticism and speed nor the size to be able to tackle a robust running back, which we're going to be facing. Again, the running backs from UCLA weren't all that good, relatively speaking, but their quarterback was. He's a 6'6", 220-pound dude.
In this case, it's a bit reversed. Their running backs, Penn State's running backs, are very good, but their quarterback isn't as much of a running threat.
Correct. So I basically stand by the comment that what I want him to do is to run more of a base defense. And if he wants to bring up one of the linebackers to threaten to blitz them and then blitz another one or something, that's fine. But do it with those guys being able to get themselves set, get themselves some yards off the line of scrimmage so they can take the angles that we talked about when we were reviewing the film from the UCLA game, and you're able to get in front of that running back and make a tackle. If instead you're tackling that guy from the side because you had to step back from the line of scrimmage to avoid, getting caught up in the congestion of the line of scrimmage, you're in trouble. And understand that this Penn State team is a classic Big Ten team, much like Michigan and Minnesota and teams like that are going to do they're not just going to do passive patty cake, zone blocking like we do. They're going to pull guards and tackles, and they're going to have lead blockers coming around the corner, and they're going to outnumber us. Okay. And if you don't have your guys positioned so that you can get in between those blocks or at least have a good angle on them, you're going to be toast because they're going to be out on you before you figure it out, because everything falls behind for those linebackers when they're forced to come up to the line of scrimmage, fake a blitz, and then somehow get back to their depth that they're supposed to have, and then read the defense and read the play and the first action and all that stuff. It's just too much. And until he stops doing that, I think we're going to continue to be susceptible to the running game. And I don't think he gains that much. It's not like we've been great at putting pressure on the quarterback or getting a lot of quarterback sacks. So this getting everybody up on the line of scrimmage is not creating the confusion and the chaos in the backfield that it's supposed to create.
Well,
so if you're not getting the desired result when you do blitz, then back them off.
I would say I would agree that we haven't certainly compared to last year with Tony White, we have not been as good about getting the sacks on the quarterback. But we have been good at getting pressure, right? Like in that UCLA game, we saw some times where we collapsed the pocket and forced Nico to make a bad throw and things of that nature. So I think we've seen plenty of that this season, not as much of getting the quarterback to the ground.
But we're like 118th out of 130 teams in sacks. We are really bad at getting to the quarterback. And even last week against UCLA offensive line, which was probably one of the less talented offensive lines that we faced among our Big Ten opponents, we still were getting there just a little fractional late, and then we couldn't get him secured, and then he would squeeze out of there and run for 20 yards.
Right.
So but we don't have to worry about the quarterback being as elusive or as physically imposing as Nico was. So that gives me some hope we could put together a plan where we could put some pressure on.
Right. And then talking about the other side of the ball, I think the other aspect of the game besides us being able to stop Penn State's running game is how we deal with the pressure that Penn State can exert. Because we saw when we were together and saw the Penn State-Indiana game, we noted how often they were blitzing and how much pressure they were getting on Indiana's very good quarterback. And similarly against Michigan State, they were getting into the backfield an awful lot. So I think that Holgorsen needs to have kind of two game plans in mind, both creativity in our running game so that we can take advantage if they do try to blitz us, right? Like have some packages where TJ looks like he's going back to pass and then actually, runs it up the gut or whatever and takes advantage of a hole in their defense, take advantage of the fact that TJ is a running quarterback, things of that nature. But then also we have to be prepared for the fact that they may look at the tape against UCLA and just load the box on us and kind of dare TJ to pass it. Once again, this freshman quarterback in a hostile night environment, to make precision throws. And we have to be preparing TJ for that as well, right? Like forcing him into quick passing situations, playing the loud crowd noise at practice. So he's prepared for that against Penn State. We need to be able to do both.
I totally agree. And I think they're going to be particularly aggressive because this is I believe this is senior night for them. And so, a lot of those players, it's a very mature team at Penn State, a lot of seniors and graduates. And so those guys are going to be having their hair on fire and they're going to want to make plays and stuff. And so I think their defensive coordinator is going to let them loose. And so we need TJ to make some good decisions quickly in terms of releasing the ball and getting it to receivers and being able to pick up blitzes, being able to see what's coming so he doesn't get blindsided and such, because I do worry again about ball security with him if he's getting hammered.
Right.
So we've got to be careful about that aspect of it as well. But if we can do that and we can establish a bit of a running game, which actually Indiana did and so did Michigan State, if EJ is able to establish a little bit of a running game, that will help tremendously. And especially if we can have TJ Lateef actually do some damage with his legs as well.
Right. Well, and I want to mention this as well. Despite, all the success that Penn State was having running the ball against Michigan State, their third down efficiency was bad. They were 2 of 10 on third downs. So if you can get them into that third down situation, then you can make some things happen. I think probably what was happening a lot in that fourth quarter, especially, is that Penn State was getting the first down and 2 downs, right, and weren't even getting to that third down scenario. But that's where our defense needs to come in and get them into those 3rd and 5 kind of situations where it's a little ambiguous if they can get it running it and force them to throw it and things of that nature.
Right. Well, and I'm just hopeful that again we need our wide receivers and for EJ to make some plays, because I really think we need to outscore these guys. I think they're gonna have success against our defense. That's my expectation of the game, and I just think that for us to be successful and win the football game, we're going to have to score quite a few points.
Right.
And to do that, we're going to have to be aggressive.
Yep. Well, getting to our predictions then, when I looked at the Vegas odds yesterday, Penn State was minus 9.5 favorites. So we are definitely going in as the underdogs here, which I don't mind, give us that hunger to go out there and surprise some people, coming off of our bye week and everything, being healthier and all that. So I'm going to be optimistic and say that we beat Penn State, because I think Iowa in some ways, even though that's a home game for us, it may be an even harder challenge, because Iowa's a very good team this year. So I really think to get us to our 8 wins, this Penn State team would be the team to do it against. So I'm going to say that we win in a nail biter, but that we pull it out. Let's say something like 30 Nebraska to 27 Penn State.
Okay. Well, I would agree. I think our best strategy for being successful is going to be that we have to stop the run. So he has to come up with a scheme that's going to put more people in the box so we can stop that running game. And even if it means we have to maybe concede a little bit more of the passing game, but by doing so, slow them down, keep it in front of us so that we don't give up big plays, that sort of thing. And then on offense, I think we cannot go in a shell and try to be conservative with the things we do to protect TJ and try to minimize his turnovers. I think we have to just trust that he understands the assignment, and that we're going to go out there and put him on the edge, let him throw to our athletic receivers, and see if we can get the job done, and put some points on the board. So I'm going to say we're going to win it, because I agree with you. I think this is of the last 2 games, Penn State and Iowa, this is the one that we have a better chance of winning than the Iowa game. For a variety of reasons, I think the Iowa game is going to be very, very difficult for Nebraska to come out victorious. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it, so to speak, right? Bottom line is, I think it's going to be 35-31 Nebraska. That's how we win. Otherwise, it could end up being a kind of a gross, ugly game where, they keep it close. We're in the mud, and it's, 14-10 type of game, just like their Michigan State game last week. And then in the fourth quarter, they pound us just like they did Michigan State.
Yep, could be. All right. And then we want to briefly mention the women's volleyball team for Nebraska. They played out here in my neck of the woods against UCLA and USC. They beat UCLA 3-1 and USC 3-0. Did drop a set against UCLA, which is the first set they've dropped in quite a number of games, ending that little streak. But I think that the fact that they didn't play their best against UCLA kind of stiffened the team up, and they played better against the USC. I actually got to go to the Galen Center here in LA to watch that game. It was probably a 50% Nebraska crowd there. They cruised through UCLA, USC 3-0. The sets progressively got closer. I think it went from like 25-13 to 25-16 to 25-20, by the last set.
Right.
So USC was starting to figure some things out, starting to make things more tricky. But Nebraska stayed ahead pretty much the whole way. And they looked really impressive out there.
They did. And I mean, yes, the point scorers were a little bit closer each set, especially that third set. I mean, the second set, we gave up a little bit of a run at the end, and similarly in the third set, we gave up some points at the end. Alex, is what I'm trying to say. It was like 23 to 17 or something like that, and then we gave up a 3-point run that got them to 20. You know what I mean? Right. So had we closed the door when we had the opportunity to, we had actually been playing really well with them, and even with all that said, we did hit over 400 for a hitting percentage for the match against USC, and so you can't complain about an offense that does that. And we held them we held them to like 157 or 155. So we did a pretty darn good job against a very talented USC team that had been on a 9-game winning streak.
Yeah.
Now we have 4 games left, and this past weekend, the UCLA and USC games were the 2 games that I thought were going to be the biggest challenges that we had between now and the end of the season and before the tournament started. So I still kind of feel that way. I know we have we've got 4 games left, but only one of them is away. It's at Indiana, but Indiana has some tough games before they play us too. So it's not like they're going to be able to, be focused exclusively on preparing to beat Nebraska. And I'm hopeful that because of some other losses that happened, and a game that I believe is either Wednesday or Thursday of this week, we may very well have basically won the Big Ten championship after the next game. If we beat Iowa on Thursday, then at most we are sharing the title already at that point with 3 games to go.
Not bad.
Yeah.
All right. And then talk about the national world of college football. A couple interesting updates on the whole coaching carousel going on nationally. Maryland's coach, Mike Laxley, who was under some pressure for, kind of the disappointing season that they've had. It was announced that he'll be continuing as the coach into 2026. The athletic department promised him more financial support for NIL and all that stuff. Basically a carbon copy of what we heard from Luke Fickell. Not too surprising that Maryland doesn't want to, get in on this coaching, like get in on a coaching search in this competitive of an environment that we have this year. So they're putting their faith in their guy to give him one more year.
Yes. And, and again, I think we're now seeing that people are recognizing with all the big schools that have already made the decision to go in a different direction that, it might be wise to, stay on the sidelines and let's pass this year on this particular one. That's pretty tough environment to get a new coach.
And then one of the big names, of course, was James Franklin, who was fired from Penn State, the team we've been talking about this whole podcast. He was just announced today as being hired as the head coach at Virginia Tech. I saw a report that apparently he negotiated his $49 million buyout with Penn State down to $9 million, which suggests that he's being paid $40 million by Virginia Tech, for whatever the duration of his contract is there. So I would say that's a great get for Virginia Tech. You and I both thought that Franklin was maybe, a little prematurely sent out of Penn State, given the amazing winning record, he generally had there. Obviously, he could not get it done against the top 10 teams. That was the big stain against him. But in terms of just bringing consistency back to a program that's been struggling and middling, I think he can definitely do that at Virginia Tech.
Oh, absolutely. And the path to the playoff, right? The goals for college football have now changed, right? The goal now is to make sure that you get to that top 12 regularly and get into the playoff. Not that you win a championship, but that you get into the mix. And then you start building from that and try to get yourself to where, a few things go your way, like what's happened at Indiana this year, where all of a sudden a couple of players come out of nowhere. You have a wide receiver that emerges as a superstar, and just a few things like that happen, and boom, now you're right in the thick of it all the way to the championship, right? So I think he has a better chance of being able to do that consistently at Virginia Tech than he did as the head coach at Penn State, because the pathway's easier.
True, though I did see someone making a point that the ACC has really been a bloodbath this year in terms of self-inflicted wounds. Like, I'm looking right now at the conference records of like the top teams: 6-1, 6-1, 5-1, 5-1, 4-2, 4-2, 4-2, 4-3.
Right.
No one's really standing out. It's all just a big melee.
Right. But that also means that there's not any one program that's a dominant power that you have to, you have very little chance of overcoming, right? It's you've got the chance that if you do the things the right way, you would be able to do something about it, right?
Yeah, that's true. And then one little update. We talked a bit about the proposed $2.4 billion equity deal within the Big Ten, and how USC and Michigan were kind of the two holdouts from moving forward with the deal. Apparently, it has been officially paused because of that resistance from Michigan and USC. So we'll see if this comes back up maybe in the off season and becomes a talking point again. But I think we made our opinions pretty clear on that particular deal on the previous podcast.
I think you're right, and I'm hopeful that that this continues in that direction, and this kind of settles down, and they realize they need to revisit that whole situation.
Indeed. And then the one big piece of news that came out this week was that Michigan State has been under investigation via the NCAA for several years now, and they were cooperating with that investigation relating to something going on under the previous coach, Mel Tucker, at Michigan State. And so that punishment was officially doled out because they had 3 ineligible players who were playing on their team for the 3 years before this current season. So the punishment includes vacating 14 wins from those 3 years, which includes their win over Nebraska from 2023. So now we officially have that loss off of our record book for that year.
Well, but we can't call it a win. It's just vacated.
Well, yes,
so
it's just not
doesn't
a loss.
Really change. Yeah. It doesn't really change our history, if you will. But that's where vacated wins is one of the most toothless punishments that you could ever do, unless you actually took championships away, unless you, as the NCAA or the Big Ten Conference would say, you can't call yourself Big Ten championships from this year when you were Big Ten champions and you use these players. That's not involved here. They didn't win the Big Ten championship, but something with teeth is my point.
Right. Also, they'll be fined for 1.5% of the football program's budget, which, according to some numbers I saw, is around $1 million for Michigan State. Also, their recruiting visits, communications, and recruiting contacts, all the rules regarding that, they're being restricted on all of those. And there is a show cause now clause out there for Mel Tucker if he pursues another coaching job within the NCAA. So, a good smack to Michigan State, I would say, for, what they got caught for. It should be mentioned that those vacated wins and those 3 ineligible players were involved in last year's team, which was the first year for Jonathan Smith, their current coach. So I saw it being mentioned that now officially he has like no Big Ten wins because his wins from last year have been vacated because they've been having a struggling season this year. So yeah, not a great look for him.
Well, and kind of unfair too, right? Like all this is he's the guy that now is going to be judged with the burden of all this stuff on his shoulders, right? So again, yeah, you gave Mel Tucker a show cause, but because of how his time at that institution ended anyway, which had nothing to do with these punishments, but on a whole separate issue, I mean, it's just another example of how Mel Tucker left that program in shambles.
Very true. In terms of the big games from Week 12 of college football, we did give some predictions on our previous podcast. One of those was Iowa versus USC, a pretty big matchup in the Big Ten. I went ahead and predicted that USC would win 28-24, and you went Iowa's way, saying they would win 21-17. But the final score for that one ended up being 26-21. So we were in the right range in terms of scoring, that it wouldn't be a super high scoring game. And frankly, it was looking like you were going to be right because Iowa went up 14-0 pretty quickly. But USC made a comeback, and Iowa uncharacteristically ended up -1 on the turnover margin because they turned the ball over. And it turned out to be a rainy day here in LA after I said that wouldn't be the case on the last podcast. Because Iowa's previous game was super rainy and bad, but yeah, we've kind of gotten a rainstorm here that's continued into today.
Yes, exactly. And yet with all of those advantages, if you will, right? They Iowa wasn't able to get it done. And you got to give USC a lot of credit. I mean, they had to play in conditions and in an environment that should have been favorable to Iowa in almost every respect, and yet USC still found a way to win it. Now, and they did that because their wide receivers made some absolutely spectacular catches, and I mean that's a remarkable group of receivers that they have.
Yeah, well, and I watched the highlights for that game. At the end, they showed Lincoln Riley celebrating the win, jumping up and down. It looked like, he had just won the Big Ten championship game. So you could tell it meant a lot to him that they made that comeback.
Yes, absolutely. That was huge, right? And that was a defining moment for their programs, particularly as it's entered the Big Ten, because they've been having to listen to all the commentary about, these West Coast schools aren't physical enough. They don't run the football. They don't understand Big Ten football, and they're going to have to adjust. Well, this is him saying, hey, we've adjusted, And Oregon, I think, is in a similar boat where, initially that was what people said about them, but Oregon has definitely turned that corner and now is a very physical football team. The teams that are embracing that and going after it, I think, are going to get rewarded.
Definitely. Then we also predicted Georgia versus Texas. I predicted Georgia would win 30-21, while you predicted Georgia to win 41-31. And it ended up being more of a beatdown than either of us thought. Georgia won that one 35-10. Though it wasn't looking that way. It was actually quite close. Georgia was only up 14-10 at the start of the fourth quarter. But then Georgia, I think they were on a drive at the time, so they continued that drive, scored a touchdown, and then they surprised everybody by going for an onside kick.
Yes.
That was executed to perfection.
Yes. They did it at a time when people didn't expect them to, but he felt comfortable doing it because he had that score late in the first half, right? He had scored some points, and he knew he was going to get the ball to start the second half. So he was able to do some things with that sequence to say, okay, now when I score, I feel really good about what I'm doing. They're definitely not going to be expecting an onside kick. So I can do their surprise. So as long as we execute, and I'm confident we can execute, then we're good.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I mean, it took me by surprise too.
For sure.
Actually, both teams were tied on turnovers, so no real advantage there. And yeah, I would say, talking about signature wins, I would kind of put that in that bucket for Georgia as well, because they've kind of, had great defense but struggled offensively on a lot of their games this year. Kind of had some close wins. So to have a fourth quarter where they kind of blew out Texas at the end, I think is a real confidence booster for them.
Yeah, I would agree.
And then last one we predicted was, of course, Oklahoma, Alabama. I went Oklahoma's way, 28-24. Well, you went the opposite score, just going Bama's way, 28-24 Alabama. And that one was a tight game for sure, but Oklahoma pulled it out 23-21. And yeah, kind of a shocker. When you looked at the stats for that game, Alabama was up 406 yards to Oklahoma's 212, but the key stat is that they had 3 turnovers.
Exactly. And you just can't you can't win games when you have turnovers, critical turnovers.
Right. And I know we were talking about how, this was a big win for Brett Venables there at Oklahoma, who's kind of been in some lukewarm water at times this season. But frankly, his offense did not play any better than it has all season. It was still quite bad. But it was just that his defense got these great turnovers off of Alabama. I think one was maybe a punt return or something like that, or a muffed punt. So that was a special teams win for them.
Muffed punt. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So they got 17 points off of those 3 turnovers of the 23 that they ended up scoring in the game.
Right.
And Alabama surprisingly missed a pretty makeable field goal, a 36-yard field goal right at halftime, which obviously would have been huge in that final point spread.
Oh, it would have been, absolutely. And the thing is that Oklahoma, they really needed this win, right? Where Alabama, had they gotten it, really would have led themselves to be in the driver's seat almost with the win. So it was a huge game for both teams, and it was a home game for Alabama. So you put all that in the mix, and then to have Oklahoma come out with the victory, it's a big deal.
Yep. So I'll just make a note there that I went 3-0 on my predictions from last week, while you went 1 of 2. So
1 and 2, yeah. It is what it is. Like I say, it's the time of year in college football where the variables all get even greater than they were a few weeks ago, because now the injuries start to pile up. Players are even if they're not injured, they're playing hurt. Everybody's playing hurt, right? They've all got bumps and bruises and things like that. The energy level isn't quite what it has been. The temperatures have changed, the seasons have changed, and now kids are starting to get colds and have flu and all that kind of crap. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And then in other games from Week 12, one of the big ones was Texas A&M versus South Carolina. That's number 3 ranked Texas A&M, so they're considered to be one of the best teams in the country, and yet they found themselves down in that game 30-3 by halftime. They had 3 turnovers in that first half alone. So yeah, just playing badly. South Carolina taking advantage, scoring on their own offensive drives. So it looked like they had this one in the bag. And I remember I looked at my phone later and I saw that Texas A&M was making the comeback, and I was like, oh no, it's not looking good. Their defense just kind of collapsed at points, it felt like, in the second half, where they were just giving up huge plays to Texas A&M. And they even got one more turnover from Texas A&M later in the game, but that still wasn't enough for them to score any points in the second half.
Right. I mean, that's the thing, is that when you have a team that's better, A&M was a better football team than South Carolina, but when you're turning the ball over and you're making mistakes, you're letting that inferior team, put it to you, right? But then for them to be able to gather themselves and come back from that, it's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, so the final score of that one ended up being 31-30. Another interesting game from this past week was closer to our home here in the Big Ten, Michigan against Northwestern. Michigan kind of escaped that one 24-22. Michigan actually missed a field goal earlier in the game. I know somebody was up 21-9 in the fourth quarter. Do you remember? Was that Michigan or was that Northwestern?
No. Michigan was up.
So they kind of let Northwestern come back into the game, because the big story from that was that Michigan had 5 turnovers to Northwestern's 0. So they were -5 on the turnover margin. But Michigan held on just enough to kick the game-winning field goal right at the end of the game.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I give great credit to Northwestern. They really did hang in there, and it really was a game that Northwestern is going to be kicking themselves to say, when you're +5, you should win, right? Yeah. I mean, that's just the way it should be, but they didn't. So, but that's a huge win now for Michigan, and you start looking at things, and these next couple of weeks for Michigan could really turn their season around. And I don't know that the differential between Michigan and Ohio State is all that great. If you begin to break down what Ohio State's schedule really looks like now that the season is coming to a close, you realize that Michigan has a chance if they can play their best game, that they could be right there with Ohio State, especially at the Big House.
Right. Yeah. It is at home for Michigan, which helps them. Though I would say that, Indiana, right, had the scare against Penn State a couple weeks ago. Texas A&M, number 3, just had this scare. Alabama, who I think was number 4, just lost. So Ohio State is kind of the only team that has stayed at that number 1 spot the whole year and not really wavered from it. They've beaten pretty solidly most of the teams that they've gone up against, though to your point, they have had kind of a easier schedule. They beat Texas early, which is obviously a good win, and then their big game against Penn State, which was scheduled to be a big game, kind of ended up being a bit of a whimper because Penn State is down this year. The thinking would be that if Ryan Day isn't stupid and tries to run the ball to make a point, like he did last year, right? If he abandons that game plan and just goes with what Ohio State is good at and throwing the ball, then they should be able to beat Michigan come this final game of the year. But Michigan, finds a way to make it close in that game all the time, right?
That's right. Well, and remember, they beat them last year.
Well, they've beaten them like the last 3 years, I think.
Right,
like
exactly.
That.
But I mean, last year, Ohio State won the national title, but they lost to Michigan. So
right.
So the Ohio State guys are going to be locked in because of that. But it's also in their heads a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Right now, Michigan's living a little rent free inside of the psyche of Ohio State.
No, you're definitely right, especially the fact that they've beaten them, several years in a row now. But the narrative coming out of the previous game was that, if Ryan Day hadn't come in with a bad game plan, then Ohio State would have won that game. So my expectation is that he'll be much better on that this year, and he'll kind of come on Sharon Moore at Michigan to have a good counter in mind.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah.
So, should be interesting, though.
Yeah, definitely. And last one I want to mention real quick was in the ACC, Georgia Tech versus Boston College. Georgia Tech won that one 36-34, but it was very nearly an upset. And it's especially amazing in the fact that Georgia Tech was, undefeated at one point. They were looking like one of the best teams in the ACC. They were ranked 16th in the college football playoff, and they nearly lost to a 1-9 Boston College team.
Right, exactly. Well, and that gets back to my comment about this time of year, strange things start to happen, and the logic kind of gets thrown out the window a little bit. Yeah.
All right. So for week 13 of college football, not as many big name matchups, but that can always lead to some surprises, with some upsets happening. So we'll be on watch for that. But one big game is USC versus Oregon in the Big Ten. That is a home game for USC. Obviously, USC is coming off of the win against Iowa, which we just mentioned was such a big one for their season. So do you think that gives them a chance against a talented Oregon team?
Oh, definitely. It gives them a chance. But I think Oregon at home is going to be a tough out, right? Like I expect Oregon to be on their best performance, right? And USC, they did struggle to beat Iowa, right?
Yes.
They struggled to beat us.
Yes. Though to remind our listeners, I just looked it up. Oregon also struggled to beat Iowa, right? On November 8th, they beat them 18-16, winning on a, final field goal sort of situation where they had to make a comeback.
Right.
But they had a bye week last week. So they've had 2 weeks to prepare, and it's at home for them.
Exactly. And I think that combined with the fact that they are probably more of a complete team, if you will, than USC is at this point. So I'm gonna put my wager on Oregon. I think Oregon wins this football game But I think it will be like a lot of the other ones. It's going to be somewhat close. So I'm going to say it's going to be 31-24. Oregon wins.
Well, I'm also going to go with Oregon winning, but I'm going to go with a bigger score spread. Oregon wins something like 42-21 over USC.
Okay. Yep.
And then another game we wanted to predict in the SEC was Oklahoma versus Missouri. That one is the home game for Oklahoma. Obviously, they're coming off the big win over Alabama. So you would have to say that the momentum is on their side. Missouri did beat Mississippi State solidly this past weekend. So that was kind of a rebound game for them after some losses. But what's your thoughts there?
Well, I was going to say, because of the momentum, Oklahoma, and it's a home game for Oklahoma, that this should be an Oklahoma victory. But then you went and pointed out how many of Oklahoma's points in that Alabama game were really that the offense didn't do so well.
Right.
When you really look at it. So can Oklahoma produce enough points on offense to stop a fairly potent Missouri offensive team? So this might be closer than I was originally thinking, but I'm still going to go with my initial gut instinct, which was that Oklahoma's going to win this football game. But I think it's going to be somewhat low scoring. I think the burden is going to be on Oklahoma's defense again to contain Missouri's offense and maybe generate some turnovers so that they can give their offense a few more possessions. But I'm going to go with I know Missouri's been scoring some points, so I'm going to go with Oklahoma 28 and Missouri 24.
Well, to shake things up here, so we're not all picking the same teams, I think I'll say that Missouri pulls off the upset, and I think their strategy to do that is that they have to play clean football. They can't have the turnovers that Alabama did. And they need to, frustrate Oklahoma's offense that has, struggled all year. Because if Oklahoma's offense is having those struggles and the defense isn't, getting them easy points, then I think that's Missouri's path to victory.
Gotcha.
So I do think it will still be pretty close, maybe a little higher scoring if Missouri, is scoring on Oklahoma's good defense. So let's say it'll be something like 35 Missouri to 28 Oklahoma.
Okay. Wow. Okay, that's a lot of scoring then.
Yeah, it might be off there, but we'll see. I want to mention that Iowa plays against Michigan State at home for Iowa this upcoming week. Of course, Iowa being the final game that Nebraska has to play in Memorial Stadium at Nebraska. Unfortunately, I don't think Michigan State's going to put up too much of a fight against Iowa. It'll probably be somewhat similar to that Penn State game that we were just talking about.
I actually question, how much of a team effort we're going to get from Michigan State in this game. I think things could get out of hand, and I think Iowa might win this game comfortably. If I were to, guess, because Michigan State chance of going to a bowl game is none, zero. They've struggled, and now they have to go play at Iowa City, and that's a tough place to play. And I just don't know that they have a lot to play for, and Iowa does. So I have a feeling that Iowa is going to kind of take advantage of that circumstance and win comfortably.
So obviously we've given our prediction for the Nebraska game. We're in a positive mindset since we won the previous game against UCLA, and we saw some, improvements in the play calling that we previously noted. If we are talking next week and we have this W in the bag for Nebraska, I'll be very happy. We'll have met the 8-4 record that I kind of predicted at the beginning of the year for us. And at that point, be gravy on top if we can manage to beat Iowa at home to kind of cap off our season. Whereas if we lose to Penn State, I'll be feeling definitely more pessimistic about our chances against Iowa because, like I say, I think Iowa's even tougher matchup for us. So really hoping we can pull this one out.
Me too. And like you say, I mean, I think the chances are pretty small of us beating Iowa if we lose to Penn State. I think the chances of us being able to beat Iowa go up if we can beat Penn State, because I think we can then carry momentum and energy from that and confidence from that Penn State victory into that Iowa game that will help us significantly. So this game against Penn State is kind of a 2-for-1. I really believe that if we can find a way to play at a high level and come out of victorious, that it will lead to good things the following week as well.
Right. And one quick thing I want to mention in terms of the college football playoff, we are recording this on Monday, November 17th. So the new playoff rankings have not come out yet. Right. But obviously we do know Texas lost and Alabama lost. Looking at the AP poll and their poll, Alabama dropped from 4th to 10th because of their loss to Oklahoma. And Texas, I believe, dropped from like 12th to 17th or something like that. So Texas is definitely out of the top 12 now. They have 3 losses. They're kind of out of that conversation. Alabama's still in the middle of it, but they're in a can't lose situation. So they can't have a, final game surprise against their in-state rival Auburn, like they have had in some past years.
Right. Well, and it'll be interesting because they might again be the beneficiaries of not playing in the conference championship game, because I'm guessing that Alabama's probably dropped to where even if they win the remaining games of the regular season, I'm trying to think of who the other person would be. Ole Miss, I think, would end up playing against Georgia for the conference championship game. So Alabama would, like Ohio State did last year, be able to sit and watch and recover, right, and get healthy while the conference championships go on. Another one of those examples of maybe this particular setup is not actually helpful for the best teams through the regular season.
Well, I was just looking. So, Georgia's last game is, of course, Georgia Tech, their rival, who's a ACC team. So in terms of the SEC standings, that game doesn't really matter. Whereas Texas A&M has to play against Texas.
Oh, it's Texas A&M. That's right. I forgot about Texas A&M. So it's not Ole Miss. It's going to be Texas A&M.
Correct. Right. Well, yeah. Right now in the AP poll, Texas A&M is 3rd, Georgia's 4th, Ole Miss is 5th. So they're all right there in that conversation. So to your point, even if one of them does trip up, Ole Miss would be kind of in line to take their place before Alabama.
Right. So Alabama's out of that. But as long as they can stay in that top 12 area and get into the playoff, they can pull an Ohio State from last year.
Yep. Well, Well, after this upcoming weekend, I think we'll probably have a few more shakeups there, and we'll properly start talking about the playoff analysis, and what the stakes are going into the final weekend of college football.
Exactly.
All right. Well, we hope you out there enjoyed listening to this podcast. You can email us at collegefootballthrowdown@gmail.com. You can also find us if you search for College Football Throwdown on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can also find us on YouTube now under College Football Throwdown. You can leave us a rating or review there or a comment. We always love hearing feedback from the fans. So thank you out there for listening, and thank you, Dad, for joining me for this episode. And until next time, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.